Now, analysts expect the bullish momentum at the Nigerian equities to persist this week as the index breaks resistance on strong volume. However, profit-taking and macro headwinds could temper gains. Muktar Mohammed, analyst at Assar Investments, joins me now for more market movements. Muktar, thanks a lot for joining us on the show today. Before we get into the Nigerian market, I'd like your take on how the progress between the US-China talks have also sent ripples across the market. We're seeing stocks like Best Buy, Amazon leading the early rally today. Last week we had seen S&P 500, the Dow Jones, Nasdaq Composite deep, especially around these lines where uncertainty remains the buzzword. But for you now, how do you see the markets responding as a whole for us?
What we see is the market will have certainty for the next 90 days.
Yes.
So, I mean, for a market that you never can tell what was going to happen, but there's clarity in terms of market direction, in terms of policy direction between the Chinese and the United States. And so hopefully that tariff might even still come down. No, China is doing 10%. Now, United States goods to China United States goods to China is doing 10%, and Chinese goods to US doing about 30%. So we might see that also significantly come down. I think it's good for the market, especially from the companies that you've just mentioned. You see, they've been struggling in terms of no market information. It's not because there was no, they're not doing well in terms of people were not buying, but the cost was going to go high. That was going to impact their bottom line in terms of turnover and in turn affect their profit. So I think it's a good thing for the market. And again, that one thing you know is that once that starts in the American market, it happens in the European market, it happens in the Asia market, and sometimes even have a snowball effect and come down here to Nigeria. Remember when the market was down in the US, even if that was not really what, if you look at what was driving the trade trigger, but Nigeria market also suffered a little of meltdown at that period, and people said, look, the world has become a global business village. One sniff, it affect the others. But I think it's very good for the market. Finally, the market is having a direction. In the next, like I said, for the next 90 days.
Yes, certainty for the next 90 days, but it also takes a whole lot more to build on this sort of trajectory we've seen so far. But now let's talk about the trading action we've seen in the Nigerian market here. We're seeing strong buy interest on MTN, Nigeria, Danks, GTCO, Nestle, and Transco Hotels. Your take around the drivers of the recent development we've seen so far in the market. And 4 out of 5 trading days last week, we saw the bulls dominate the market. This was quite a different scenario about 2-3 weeks ago.
Yes, when you look at those companies you just named, you realize that those are companies that are actually struggling in terms of FX losses. And what you're seeing there is a big recovery from those FX losses. One company that you're really surprised us in terms of that is Nestle Nigeria.
Yes.
Without even shareholder reintroducing any right issue or not, you can compare that to others in its sector. Like if you talk about Nigeria Brewery recovery, you're not surprised because they did the right issue. But Nestle just come up, and again, with type of microeconomic headwinds we've been suffering from, you wonder how that came out from. And that shows positivity I mean, the positivity of that result is affecting the market and a lot of positivity around that stock. And that was good for the market from a loss and to a profit of.
And talking about return to positivity as well, we also had the CEO of Airtel Africa as well. Now, they also made a return to profitability. The revenue grew about 21% as well. So your take around how we might see stock movements.
You see the telecom sector, I'll just about to come to that. You see Airtel Africa about $66 million. Again, you need to say, okay, fine. And you know their biggest mover is always in the Nigerian market. And you're not surprised about that because you forget about the price increment in terms of data, and the calls also in Nigeria also help impact the bottom line of those companies, like Airtel Africa and also MTN Nigeria. You see that MTN Nigeria have moved into profitability in terms of about 1 trillion, but again, in terms of expenditure was a little bit high. But you know that will happen because from where they are coming from because of the FX losses. So definitely you see positivity in that space, especially in the telecom sector, and we expect that to continue. Not to forget that MTN Nigeria started this year at about 180, 176, 180, and today is driving at 268. That is huge movement, which people will really not see until you begin to see it at 400 or 500. So, but I think that's a very good one for the telecom sector recovery. And generally for the market, when you look at those FX losses and the kind of recovery that those companies have done, is miraculous.
Yes, and talking about miraculous and how we've also seen the mirroring effect of the general equities performance. Now, for the longest while as well, the narrative we've had when we're looking at the sectorial performance, it's been largely mixed. But last week, for example, we had positives across both consumer goods, oil and gas, banking. Your take around whether or not we can sustain this level of positivity?
I think we will sustain it. If you look at the consumer goods, like I said, those losses are over. Definitely, we've seen a little bit of stability or corridor of stability in the FX rate.
But we're seeing the Naira move at about that 1.6 range, and it's cautious sentiment.
Yes, there. So definitely you expect that positivity to continue in those companies. Then also the banking sector, you shouldn't forget that there's still the recapitalization drive. Two of the major, about
the
three,
earnings are exciting everyone too.
Yeah, three major of the Fuga banks, the First Bank or First Holding. Yes. They have not concluded their own issue yet. GTCO also have not concluded. That of GTCO is even interesting because they are also looking at doing the current their current drive towards completion of their will be done attracting foreign direct foreign portfolio investors. That's what the management of GTCO say they are going to. Then also you also look at those numbers, and then going forward, what are the prices of this equity at the moment, and the numbers they have been able to turn up in first quarter is very impressive. So I'm not so surprised about the financial sector. It's one sector to watch, especially when you look at the history that has to do with recapitalization in the Nigerian banking sector. The kind of boom that we have seen that was sustained for a very long time was as a result of the first recapitalization drive. And this recapitalization drive is very different because it's not driven only because the bank could not have a huge capital base, but it's driven because Nigeria wants to operate in a $1 trillion economy and they know that the bank should be the ones driving that growth.
Yeah, but now when we are also looking at the outlook for the market as well, now we also have to take a look at the market sensitivities, especially with regards to the fact that we are having the MPC also meet sometime by the close of this next week, in fact, when the meetings will be held. Now, for you, in terms of how these likely moves might impact the market, we're also waiting for the inflation data as well. Definitely the consumer goods are the ones that readily come to mind. But for you, your take on what the MPC might likely do and the sort of sensitivities we would have sent.
David, when you look at the MPC, what we will see, we won't see anything different. The only thing we want to see from the MPC is the MPC telling us that they want to address that issue of FX liquidity. Remember that we are still behind our budget benchmark of 1,500 and also the central bank benchmark of almost about 1,400. So there's still a lot of work to be done. So we'll see how they want to sustain that, either through foreign direct investors or portfolio investors, which has been very, very good thus far. So hopefully that's what we'll be expecting for the harder drive, especially attracting diaspora inflow.
Funds,
So that's what we'll be hearing from them. In terms of the inflationary data, David, if you look at what is happening generally around the inflation aspect, around the market space, you look at the petroleum sector, which is the larger driver of inflation in Nigeria, you realize that price has come down from where they were the first time the MPC met and where they are now. It's relatively different, especially because of our local production through Dangote refinery. So we
already have another price slash today too.
So we are expecting that a lot will happen in those inflation data. We might not see the effect of today's price flash on that data, but going forward, we continue to see that the inflation will definitely come down. But again, what will sustain inflation coming down will still depend on the FX rate, the FX volatility, the exchange rate. Once we are able to stabilize that rate, you see inflation will definitely come down drastically. What we are enjoying now in terms of those FX stability and that affecting the inflationary figures, because we are not importing so much of refined petroleum product like we used to import before. And we'll hope that that might continue, especially when you look at the government policy of local company, the
Nigeria First agenda.
Yes.
So we have the likes of Ipman saying we shouldn't make that abrupt decision of immediately banning the import.
They have the data, they have what they want to say, but the government have said Nigerian first. But that means that if Dangote refinery and NNPC can meet our local demand and export, there's no need for why you're importing.
Wrapping up the conversation now, I'd like your take on, really, that's the highlight of also our discussion here. Where should investors be looking at? Buy, hold, sell? What's your recommendation?
Buy.
Okay. Well, we'll leave the conversation here for now. Thank you so much for your time on the show today. That was Muktar Mohammed, analyst at Assar Investments.